We are getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Search for Nancy Guthrie. She's now been missing well over
3 months of silence on this channel. Not because I stopped watching. Because I was not going to return until I had the piece that makes everything else make sense. Not another recap. Not another timeline you have already memorized. The reason. The actual reason someone would plan that level of operation against an 84-year-old woman sleeping alone in her home. And this week, that reason surfaced. A report from Hayden Times claims Annie Guthrie approached her mother for a loan in the weeks before Nancy vanished on February 1. Nancy refused. That claim has not been confirmed by law enforcement. The family has not addressed it. But it did not land in a vacuum. It landed inside a case that has been building a financial picture for months, and it gave that picture a starting point it was missing. This video follows the money, property records, legal filings, law enforcement actions, and one conversation between a mother and her daughter that may have started everything. There is a $350,000 gap between the two properties. Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills sits at roughly $1 million. Annie and Tommaso's place, 4 miles away, is valued around $650,000. On its own, that gap is unremarkable. Parents frequently hold more than their children. But when you are trying to understand why someone would execute a 3-weekend surveillance operation against a specific woman in a specific house, what she owns stops being background detail and starts being context. Because the most consistent motive in cases where an elderly person is harmed by someone in their own circle is not personal grievance. It is not history. It is access. Access to assets that only become available once the owner is no longer in the picture. 8 months before Nancy disappeared, Tommaso signed a durable power of attorney designating Annie as his agent over financial and property matters. Legal commentators who reviewed the document publicly called it routine. Standard language for a real estate transaction or mortgage refinance. Maybe that is exactly what it was. But place it in sequence. May 2025, the document is signed. Sometime before January 31st, Annie reportedly asks Nancy for money and is turned down. January 31st, Nancy has dinner at Annie and Tommaso's house. Tommaso drives her home. February 1st, she is gone. You can dismiss any individual item as coincidence. What you cannot do is dismiss the direction the sequence moves in. Every step in that chain points the same way. Now look at what was happening at Nancy's property in the weeks that followed. Photographs emerged showing vehicles outside her residence. Annie's Honda CR-V was visible. Boxes were being carried out. Nancy has not been declared dead. No death certificate has been filed. No probate court has granted anyone authority to remove belongings from the home of a woman whose disappearance remains an active criminal investigation. No legal mechanism existed to authorize what those photographs appear to show. And when a true crime journalist posted publicly asking who might be planning to move into Nancy's home, the response that spread fastest was blunt. Someone who cannot cover their own property taxes. There is no confirmed plan. But the public connected the available dots, and the picture they arrived at is a family positioning itself to assume control of a property that does not legally belong to them while its owner remains classified as missing. Here is something I have not framed this way before. Every protection that was absent from Nancy's life costs money to provide. A camera monitoring subscription is roughly $15 monthly. A medical alert pendant is under $1 a day. A part-time overnight aide through a home health agency in Tucson runs a few $100s weekly. These are not extraordinary measures. They are the standard precautions that families with elderly parents living alone put in place without much deliberation. The Guthrie family had the financial capacity. Between Savannah's salary and the combined resources of 3 siblings, every single one of those safeguards was accessible with a single phone call. None of it existed. Nancy was left in $1 million home with no functioning camera system, no alarm, no overnight help, and no ability to hear anything once her hearing aids came out at night. If Annie was in a position where she had recently been denied a loan by her mother, then the absence of those protections takes on a dimension it did not have before. It stops being an oversight and starts being a condition. A condition that left a vulnerable, isolated, unmonitored woman in a high-value property easier to reach than she would have been if anyone had made those phone calls. Walk through the night of January 31st one more time, but from the financial angle rather than the surveillance angle. Nancy takes a documented Uber to dinner at 5:32 in the evening. That ride has timestamps, in-car footage, a driver who cooperated fully with investigators. Everything about her trip to Annie's house is on the record. The return trip is not. Tommaso drove her home. He decided when they left. He chose the route. He was the last person to see her enter that house, and his account of those final minutes is the only one that exists. No camera recorded the arrival. No neighbor saw it happen. No app generated a timestamp. If the loan refusal is real, that dinner table was shared by a daughter who had recently been told no and a mother who had said it. And Tommaso, who drove Nancy home that night, is the husband of that daughter. What followed was 14 hours and 13 minutes of complete silence. No call. No text. No one driving 4 miles to check on a woman they knew was alone, nearly deaf, and dependent on medication the sheriff said could prove fatal to miss. A goodnight message after dropping off an elderly parent is not a gesture. It is a reflex. It takes 3 seconds. Its absence on the night of January 31st created the exact window that whoever took Nancy needed. An uninterrupted 14-hour block where the only mechanism for discovering something had gone wrong was a church friend noticing an empty chair on a Sunday morning livestream. The 911 call has never been released. Not the audio. Not a transcript. Not a summary. Arizona law classifies these recordings as public records. In cases with this level of media attention, they typically surface within days. 3 months in, nobody has heard what Annie said when she reported her mother missing. Retired Detective Bob Gilliam said on a public interview that there is investigative material on that recording that law enforcement has deliberately withheld from public access. He suggested it may not surface until a trial date approaches. A trial. Not a conclusion. Not a cold case. A courtroom proceeding. That word carries its own meaning. The family arrived at Nancy's house at 11:56 in the morning. The 911 call was placed at 12:03. 7 minutes elapsed between approaching the home of a missing 84-year-old woman and calling for help. If visible evidence of a crime was present near the entrance, the question of what filled those 7 minutes does not have a comfortable answer. The recording likely captures what was happening in the moments immediately before and during that call. Background sound. Other voices. The emotional register of the caller. All of it sealed because investigators determined the public cannot hear it yet. The Cody search returned negative. Whoever left biological material inside Nancy's home has no prior criminal record. No arrests. No convictions. Not a career criminal. Not a stranger with a history. Someone living an ordinary life. Someone who might attend family dinners. Someone who might drive an elderly woman home and sign legal documents and ask for loans that get refused. 3 months. No arrest. A loan reportedly denied. A vehicle held for 40 days of forensic examination. A 911 call preserved for what a retired detective believes is a future trial. DNA from multiple unidentified individuals with clean records. And an investigation that has gone quiet in exactly the way investigations go quiet when something is being assembled away from public view. The answer to why someone would do this begins with a conversation about money that ended with a mother saying no. And it ends with boxes leaving her home before anyone has declared her dead.